Welcome to the Bad Boss Journal, the dope podcast where you can anonymously say exactly what you think about your bad boss, toxic work environment, and find out how to handle
it. Welcome to the final episode for season 1 for the Bad Boss Journal. My name is Michelle, and I'm here with Ava.
Hi, everyone.
Long time no see.
I know. I've missed you all.
Yeah, it's been a doozy for you in terms of work.
Both of us. I feel like, as soon as we got some good momentum in the podcast, then both of our workloads exploded.
Yeah, it does. And it's always like, I can't ever see an ebb and flow with this. So I just feel like sometimes I'm like barely hanging on to my life as I'm being forced into these, I don't know what to even call it, but vortexes of opportunities, I guess.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Actually, someone asked me, I stood up from my desk in my office and I stood there motionless for a moment, and somebody asked me if something was wrong. And I was like, I'm just trying to process and remember what my name is right now.
I can feel that because I feel like every 4 to 6 months I add a year. I don't know why I do this, but I have no concept of my age anymore. And I just keep adding years. And then my birthday's coming up in a week. And I talked to my husband. He's like, and his birthday comes before mine. And we were celebrating his birthday. And I was like, oh, you're like, what, 35 now? Congrats. And he's like, dude, I'm 34.
No, that happened to me this last year. Literally, I lost a year. And I don't know if it was COVID or work or whatever, but I was filling out some medical papers and I was like, oh, they totally added a year to my birthday. And then I actually had to do the math and I was like, no, I totally have been missing a year.
Oh my gosh. I had to do the math too today when I went to the doctor. I had to actually calculate.
Yeah.
2022 minus my year. I had to figure it out. It's so embarrassing.
Yeah, because I'm like, oh yeah, this age I shouldn't be getting, and then I was like, oh wait, maybe I'm actually supposed to be getting that.
Yeah, I kept thinking I was 39, and apparently I'm not. I'm way younger than that. I keep adding years to the point, my husband's just like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, I don't know.
Well, then it makes it easy for people to be like, "Oh, you look really young for your age."
Right. It makes me feel better, at least. I look young for my age.
Yes. Yeah.
I'll be 50 soon enough, and people are like, "Man, you look at least like you're in your mid to late 30s."
You're like, I'm going by cat years now.
Right.
Years.
So yeah, I mean, while you were gone, we did have some really cool guests come on, but I thought it would be great as our final episode for the season to do some recaps about, for some of the episodes that we've done so far. I remember, I think it was the one with the sadistic boss that I thought was pretty intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. You remember that one?
I remember that one.
Yeah. And especially it was about Mary. And she was talking about how her boss would enjoy making her colleagues cry.
Yes.
And the amount of anxiety that they had. And I mean, the stories, I mean, I have my own share of bad bosses, but when I was hearing some of these, I was like, man, I haven't even seen the brunt of it,
Right. Yeah. It gives you perspective on the bad boss you're dealing with, or that and that, just when you think it couldn't be worse, it can be in a lot of instances.
Yeah. I remember when we did the episodes with the one with the unstable boss and then the one with the screamer, that's something I can relate to.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Unstable. Definitely been there, done that. Screamer. Yeah. Screamer / swear. I've had the swear
And
where
then
like,
they swear at you.
yeah, like it's almost like a Tourette's of swearing, and
Wow.
you're like, what just happened? And then it's something so small, and you're like, but we're cursing at that level. So I remember that one as well. Yeah.
Yeah. The one that I did when you weren't here, there were two, but the one that was like really intense yet very inspirational was the one with the woman who was dating her bad boss.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and she's doing some amazing work with it, and she's using her inspirational story to help others now. But man, like when I heard about that, I think just thinking about the amount of grit and perseverance you need to have to be able to get out of a toxic relationship like that, especially when you feel cornered, like it's everything at that point. If it's, the boss is also your partner,
Right.
like you're supposed to be a life partner, right? I can't imagine having to deal with that.
No, no. Or like to have those kinds of conversations, like, because it just permeates every part of aspect of your life.
I know. And like, especially if you have a bad boss, usually you get to go home and talk about it to your friends, over the phone, or you meet them in person. Or if you have a partner at home, you would like, kind of unload on them. And it's like you're coming home to that person.
Right. Right.
That's terrifying to me.
Yeah. It makes me think of like the quintessential like sitcoms where, they talk about the dad's getting off from work, but he doesn't want to come into the house because he knows he's got responsibilities. So he like
Yeah.
drives around the block a couple
Yeah.
of times,
Yeah.
I feel like if your bad boss is also your partner, you're like, ooh, you're like, can I schedule a happy hour somewhere or go stay with a friend? Or,
Right. Or if they're like volatile, you're not even allowed to do stuff like that, Like
right.
I've met people who had abusive partners and they are incredibly protective and like, territorial. So they won't even let you go out
Yeah.
to hang out with your friends and start isolating you and stuff. So I can only imagine what she had to go through. And to overcome that, I think is so huge. And I will say, after speaking with her, it gave me more inspiration to like focus on what I need to do in my life because I have very specific goals that I'm trying to accomplish right now, especially with where I'm at, personally.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like a quick background. I think I don't know if I talked about it, but basically my husband and I like had to switch roles in a way. My husband is not doing well, health wise. So I had, we talked about it and, I had him step away from his work because it was making it worse. And so he's home and he's kind of taken over the role of taking care of the kids. And then I've moved into the main breadwinner role. And I mean, I was working beforehand, but like now I'm like adding on to for what two people would essentially bring in, right?
Right.
And I don't want to work like that anymore, It's funny because I have a lot of people in my life who believe that I'm a hustler and I love to work or I'm addicted to working. But in actuality, I hate it. Like, I don't like working. Like, my goal in life is to literally just lay in my bed and have somebody manually lift me off and feed me. Like, I don't want to do anything. I'm so tired. But, I have very specific goals in mind for where I want to be in my life so that I do not have to work forever. And in order to do that, though, I'm going to have to hustle for the time being. But yeah, I think speaking of, I feel like, we did do 2 episodes about work-life balance. And I think that would be good to recap as well, because it's interesting because back then, I don't even think we were working as much, but as we thought compared to now.
Right. I agree.
I will say, I do think I rubbed off on you a little because you're now taking certain supplements,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. So for everybody, Michelle is like my guru reminder. So like I had some unusual pain and like it just happened to come up in conversation and I was like, oh, I'm like she like gave me epiphany because I thought I was the only person who had this pain and I was gonna have to try to explain it to a doctor. And now I'm on magnesium, people, and the gummies, and they're delicious.
And she was like, oh, I'm like doubling it. I was like, no, you cannot double supplements. Treat them like medicine. They're not candy. So, but yeah, I mean, certain things I know just because I have my whole like own health issues that I got from actually burnout, and that's why even though I do work a lot, I'm always so like I'm trying to be really mindful so that I don't ever get back to that place where I fully burned out and ended up getting really sick and for years couldn't figure out what it was, and then, being misdiagnosed constantly until, my sister, fun fact, my sister was the one who ended up diagnosing me, and she was right. And it just happened that she was working at an OB clinic. So she was able to know what, the symptoms that I had that correlated to whatever. Yeah. So, but yeah, like certain things, like it's so interesting how certain vitamin deficiencies cause things in your body. And then like a lot of times doctors don't even tell you that.
Well, funny, like you say that. And then I feel like I've either watched a documentary or like I've had friends going through medical school or something. And they're like, yeah, certain things that we would think are basic are not focus areas for practicing doctors. Like vitamin deficiencies is not necessarily something that they automatically like think to address when someone comes in with an issue.
Right. Yeah, and there were certain things that was happening in my life, and my husband was the one who actually figured it out, because he and I were trying to do a lot of like body hacking things, not in like a weird way, but like just trying to figure out how to live healthier, especially with his health issues. And so he's been reading up on like all sorts of things, like, and it's not like weird woo-woo stuff, but like he's actually researching like the NIH and all that, all those articles. And yeah, like I was having these weird stomach spasms, like it felt like Charlie horses, but on my stomach. And to the point, like I'd wake up screaming in pain because it hurt so much. And it turned out I had a magnesium and potassium deficiency. I started taking those and they just went away. And then if I stop taking them, they come back. Yeah. Like I'll accidentally forget to take them and then all of a sudden it'll start coming back again. So yeah, it's really interesting how like little things like that can, change, especially I think as we get older, like, and then we're putting more strain on our bodies by like working a lot and all that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, really a key thing, which goes to the work-life balance, is that everybody's body responds differently to stress.
Yeah.
And while we may think that bad boss is not having a physical, may only be having a mental effect on us and not or emotional effect on us, they're also having a physical effect on us, and how much we're working has an effect. And that shows up in different ways for different people. And so, learning how to find that balance and actually listen to our bodies is really important.
Yeah. What's really interesting is I was actually on a business trip for like 10 days, and it was really interesting because I met so many different people, so many hustlers, so many entrepreneurs. And I remember one woman telling me that there was no such thing as work-life balance, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it depends on the person and their perspective, right? Even for me now, working the amount of hours or working the amount of jobs or projects that I have, what I've had to do was like pre-schedule things out so that I do have some semblance of balance, if you will, right? So I think I really do think it depends on the person and their definition of what work-life balance could look like for them. I have friends who don't believe in it at all, and they think it's a farce. But then they work themselves to a point where they'll look back and like they don't, like they don't have their friends anymore. All they do is work. And for me, I think I'm in a very different place compared to a lot of people because I had, this health scare with my husband, and I kind of took it, you don't really notice things in life until it just slaps you in the face, right? Mm-hmm. And when I thought I was losing him, I stopped and I realized, oh my gosh, like I was working so hard for what? Right? I was always complaining about not having enough money, not having enough time, not having this, not having that. And then I realized, like, right as soon as I said that one time, my husband lost his job. And then I ended up like revamping my business and like being able to do it. But like, there was a point where I was like, oh wow, like I really don't have money. And I really, like, you know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
these perspectives that you get to in your life. And while it was incredibly stressful for me, those were like those awakening aha moments, right?
Mhm.
Where it was like, oh, like saying those things constantly were not helping me at all, right?
Yeah.
Or working my butt off and then looking back and realizing that it was like there was nothing to show for it.
Yeah.
And so I was able to kind of change my perspective. So even now when I work a lot, it's because I have this very set goal that I want to get to at a very short amount of time. So, unfortunately, I do have to work a lot, but I schedule out time to, I mean, it may sound awful to some people, scheduling out time for family or scheduling out time for self care. But for me, that's how I make it work, right? So even when I'm tired, like I still have time to hang out with my kids. I still have date nights with my husband. I go to the chiropractor. I go get a massage once a month because my shoulders are all messed up. Like I'm doing little things to make sure that I'm trying to keep that semblance, right? And sometimes it doesn't work. I'm not going to lie. Like, there are times where I'm just like, I need to get past this month. There were a lot of times like that. But I feel like, I was at a pretty low point last month because I had so many big things coming up in each job I had to do. Because again, like, fun fact, I was having a very, I guess this is a bit too personal, but like I was having a very difficult time trying to make what two people would normally make. I know that kind of sounds stupid, but like,
No, not at
um,
all.
yeah, because like, yeah, the amount of money he was bringing in, I'm like trying to take over doing that. And it was very difficult for like the first, several months. And I'm getting there, but I'm still having to do like two people's jobs, right?
Yeah.
So the goal is to cut back, but, get myself to a place where I am making the money I need to take care of my family, but with one job, which is not that easy as
Yeah.
I want it to be. I feel like, things have become designed in our culture where you have to work like that or, you end up having to live in different means.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No,
I mean,
I
I think
agree.
work
And
life balance is very difficult.
yeah.
But yeah, and it's something that I have to work on every day.
Yeah. I'm still learning. Michelle has been a great teacher, and continues to be a great role model. And I think, it reminds me of some of the, you'll see in the news sometimes like, oh, like Steve Jobs, like this is what his daily routine is or whatever. And it makes
Right.
me think about that, like, while these people are very successful and they have very demanding jobs, they do set boundaries and red lines,
Yes.
do certain things, and have certain things in their lives. For some people, it's having that, quiet couple of, an hour or so in the morning, or scheduling that, workout. It can be like the scheduling time with your family, etc. And then I also think Michelle brought up a great point that made me like reinforce it. Just because a lot of people assume, a lot of bad bosses assume that just because people are single, that they don't have the responsibilities or the stresses of taking care of family. But a
Right.
lot of people, especially based on the economy and
Hmm.
culture, a single people are responsible for their parents.
Yep.
They're responsible for siblings who haven't, like, you know, um, flown the nest or have never flown the nest. And so they're faced with a lot of the similar responsibilities, if not more so, because they're
Yeah.
dealing with adults that they have to take care of with one person's income. So,
Yeah.
I think that's another thing that, bad bosses sometimes and people don't take into consideration, that just because somebody's not married or doesn't have kids doesn't mean they don't have, great responsibility for family and other people in their lives.
Yeah. And I feel like regardless of where you are in your life, you should feel validated in where you are, right? And I will say that for me, the biggest changes that I was able to make in my life came from like, that whole thing with my husband getting sick. So now anytime, I think I've said this before when we were talking about work-life balance, but anytime I have to make a choice or I'm in a difficult position, right? Like whether it's a really bad boss, which I was, dealing with myself personally, or anything, right? Financial or project or whatever that comes your way, and you have to make a decision and you're feeling either stressed or trying to question where you are with it. I always tell myself, like, and this is kind of morbid for some people, I think, but it's worked for me very well. And like the question is, if I were to die tomorrow, will I be happy with this choice that I'm about to make?
Yeah.
And I think it goes for everything, whether it's the workload you're going through, whether it's the bad boss situation you're in, whether it's, taking on a new job or whoever, right? Like, a new friend you made or whatever, like a new proposition, whatever the case may be. I always have to take a step and remind myself, like, am I going to be happy with this? Am I going to regret it? Am I going to be grateful I did it? Like, what is that going to be? And I mean, even for my husband, it was like, he wants to write. I hope it's okay that I'm sharing this because he is the producer for the show, so he's going to listen. But like, for example, my husband wants to do something, right? And he has a very hard time starting the project. Now, I told him, like, you have to, like, and I had to remind him, like, if you got to a point where you got hurt again, and you got sick again, would you regret not doing this? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said yes. And so sometimes, like, we need to remind ourselves of like how we're going to feel, if we are lucky enough to get to that old age where we're on our deathbed and we look back on our life. And I remember reading an article way years ago, and it never really resonated with me until like I was actually in a place where like life just like slapped me in the face. But I remember it was an article with like a respite nurse or like a death doula or somebody, and they were talking about what all the similarities that everybody went through when they were at their deathbed, right? Like they were about to pass, and the things that they would talk about. And a lot of the times the regrets weren't making more money or getting to that position in their career. It was not spending enough time with their friends or family. It was not spending enough time with their children, or, not going on those vacations they wanted to go on, right? And so I think sometimes like reminding ourselves that life is not infinite, right? Like there is an end.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because like I grew up Buddhist. So like for me, it doesn't depress me to that extent. Like it just reminds me that life is precious. It is short. And, we should enjoy it instead of waiting to enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I kind of do a similar thing. And then I also think about like, and I'll do this often with stuff, like, am I working to get stuff or to like, or, the bigger, like, I think about, people want the bigger house or the nicer car. Like, is that really going to matter? Like, if it all went up in fire, like, what, or, a fire started, what would I grab? And I'm like, and be okay with, like, eventually be okay with that, things that were lost. And really, it has typically nothing to do with work. It has to do with like the memories of things with your family and your friends or the time that you spent. And you're exactly right. And that's what we need to focus on. Because nobody wants a bigger car when they're on their deathbed. That's not what they're thinking about.
Yeah. And it is interesting you mentioned that, because I feel like the more I started to shift my approach in thinking about these things, I do have like I have very set like financial goals, but it has nothing to do with material wealth.
Right.
It just has to do with like a set amount I need to be able to like retire so I can spend more time with my family. But again, like it's always like a tug and pull, because I'm like, oh, well, what if something happened now? So like I still like maintain what I need to do. And I remember there was 1 month, I think it was last month, where there was like a few weeks where I was working like obscene hours. It had to be done because of like all these like deadlines I was under. But then after I put my foot down, I drew boundaries. I started to implement because I knew it wasn't going to be healthy for me or my family long term. And I was like, well, I can't do this long term anyways. But
Yeah.
I put down boundaries. I started to like use like the features on my phone. So I have the focus thing that blocks it out. So like at night, I'll turn that on for night. If I have to get work done, I'll turn that on as well. Like, so I started creating these boundaries where people can't just reach me like,
Yeah.
and me get distracted anymore. And so it was very hard at first because like I'm just tethered to my phone because of the type of work, it's all like blinging on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I've had to start doing that, and so that I could still get some semblance back of like work-life balance. And or I mean, again, I don't even know, some people may be listening to this and be like, oh, Michelle, you're full of S.
Yeah.
You're full of caca. But like we all do what we can to make our life work for us. And
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because like you made me think of, I was having this conversation with my mom because I've been working crazy recently as well. And, you have a meeting because you're expecting your bosses to give you priorities, but then everything is a priority. And so you come out
right.
of the meeting going, well, did I get anything out of this? And so like I didn't realize consciously that I was like, well, I'm just going to figure out what my priorities are of the priorities. And then until
Hmm.
somebody says something differently, I'll just, continue as I'm going. And the funny thing is, half of the time, people are going to go with whatever you prioritize if they can't do it for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I feel like that's something similar that I've gone through as well, where sometimes you just have to take the reins and just do what you need to do, because sometimes, yeah, they're not going to be as helpful.
Yeah. So kind of like whether there is or is not work life balance, your life and your health are worth more than the job. So I will say
Yes.
that. And I think ultimately we all need to remember that regardless of what we do, whether you're a janitor or you cut grass or you do hair or you're the CEO of a major corporation, that we all need to remember that we're worthy and we are enough. And it doesn't matter what the position that you hold, the amount of money that you make, that you are enough just by being a human and who you are.
Yes. And I think that also, the whole pandemic really opened everybody's eyes to the situation that we're put into, just being put into this rat race and the expectations of what we're supposed to be doing. And, the whole great resignation, right? Like, I do believe that a lot of people are not going to go back to their regular jobs because there are options, and there was a time where they were able to just sit and realize, right? Because we're
Mm-hmm.
put in these positions where we have to work, 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 and we're unhappy, we're unsatisfied, but we have to do it because that's we have to take care of ourselves. And then when you're put in a place where you get to sit and think for a bit and you have time, you
Yeah.
realize that there's so, like, the internet is just abound with opportunities for
Mm-hmm.
possibilities, right? And
Yeah.
so many people are going into the digital nomad route, myself included. I've been trying to become a digital nomad for years, and I just could not figure out how to make it work. And then, the opportunities arose and I took them, and, I'm running with it and seeing where it's leading me. And I can see it now. In the beginning, I never like really need to see how far I go down, but I need to see a path. And I saw a path for a while, then like I couldn't see the path, and then I got kind of depressed and, stressed out about it. And now I can kind of see where I'm going with this. So, I think a lot of people are going through that now. Like they're realizing that they can learn new skills. They can do things to take their life back in a way. And I really like that. I really love what it's, that people are doing this, and they're getting those ideas, and they're getting motivated to do what makes them feel complete and whole.
Yeah.
And it may take some time to figure it out. I told you, it took me years to get to, and I'm not even like at my end goal, but like to get to being like having a virtual job or whatever you want. It took me a while, but I think that people are starting to realize that there are more opportunities out there that will allow them to have the life that they want.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I completely agree that people had the time to actually reflect and
Mm-hmm.
determine what they value, and what they don't value. And the Great Resignation is a reflection of that, and the
Mm-hmm.
movement of people to digital nomad lifestyles and to basically being able to go back out into the world, into nature, and explore,
Mm-hmm.
but yet stay connected, is huge right now. And I aspire to that one day. I kind of have an idea of what I want it to look like, but I don't know how to get
Mm-hmm.
there. I'm less of an entrepreneur and more of a worker bee. But
No, there's places like that for you too, though. That's the thing.
yeah,
Like, there's definitely an entrepreneurial spirit that happens in the digital nomad sphere, but there are definitely like there's something for everyone, you know? Yeah, I feel like people are learning that it's sometimes, better to work for themselves than to work for a bad boss. I had friends who were like joking about how they were the worst boss. Like they were like, oh, the bad boss is me.
yeah, yeah.
And I'm the worst to myself type of thing. But honestly, like it's still better than having a bad boss that is not you.
Yes, yes, yes. I would
Yeah.
agree. I would agree.
So, what would be your advice for somebody who's listening to this and they are dealing with a situation where they have a bad boss and they're feeling stuck, and they're feeling helpless, or they don't really know what to do?
You're not stuck. You may feel like you're helpless right now, but you're not, and you're not alone. Try to take back your power. Take a moment to yourself, take a day, and start jotting down what you enjoy, where you want to see yourself being, and plan your getaway strategy is what I would tell someone in a bad boss situation right now.
Hmm. I think for me, it would be a little bit of tough love, but also making sure the person understands that they are worthy, right?
Yeah.
So whenever we feel stuck, I do think it is a lot of times it could be perspective as well. Unless like you are in like a relationship with your boss too.
Yes.
Like that is a whole other thing, right? But I think there have been times in my life where I felt stuck. I felt like I didn't have choices, but we do have choices. And I think it's important to remember that because it is very difficult, but it allows us to take back control.
Yeah.
And so if you are in a position where you have a bad boss that you do not want to deal with anymore and you don't want to be in it, take back your power. You do have a choice. It's scary, like I know how scary it can be to try to change things up, but I believe in you. I believe that we all have that power to move on, reach out for help. If if you have insurance and you can get a therapist, that always helps too, because having somebody who has the skills to help break down the things you are going through and help you out with that. Talk to a career coach too. LinkedIn is a really great tool to try to connect and try to find other jobs out there. But you do have a choice and you are worthy. You don't need that in your life.
Yeah. And even when you think doors are closed, Michelle's reminding me, or something's not available, you never know. For example, my in my job right now, they started talking about what's next for me, what's the next job. And they came back with like, oh, there's only two choices. And I threw out a third choice. They said that wasn't viable. And so then when I prioritized those two measly choices, then that third choice that wasn't an option anymore became like the top option. So, you never know, when someone tells you a door is closed, that what door may open up again.
Yeah.
And what's meant for you is meant for you. And
Hmm.
nobody can steal the success that's coming your way.
Hmm. Yeah. I like that. I think that's a really great note to end on for season 1.
Thank you to Bad Boss fans, and hopefully you'll keep following us for season 2.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for listening. We really appreciate it. And we hope you got something out of it. I feel like just listening, I mean, for us, well, personally, I feel like just having these people on to talk about their stories was incredibly validating, and gave me a lot of insight too, right? To kind of give me perspective on my own life choices and what I went through and, what I still have to go through at times. But yeah, it was really great getting to create this with everyone. That's, the listeners as well as Ava and all that and the guests. So thank you all so much for listening. And we hope you'll be back for season 2. Bye, everyone. Do you have a bad boss experience you'd like to share with us? Visit our website, thebadbossjournal.com, to submit your story. You can also support our show by checking out our merch and more on our website. Thank you so much for listening to the Bad Boss Journal.